Hello and welcome to the Wednesday check-in brought to you by David Gockstein. I am your host, Landy, and today is May 27th, 2026. And we are looking at Bitcoin on the daily here. And boy, oh boy, the levels are playing out perfectly, which actually isn't a surprise, right? If you have your levels laid out correctly for Bitcoin, you're going to see that Bitcoin plays the levels perfectly, nearly flawlessly even every time. And now we're looking at, a mixture of a monthly level overhead at 82.5, a weekly level at 78 to 78.4 to around that 80,500 to 700. And then a big daily level between $74,000 and $76,000. And Bitcoin now has hit the and filled this daily level here. So we have decision time on deck for Bitcoin. And that is, do we see a breakdown from where Bitcoin currently is to hit the next level to the downside down here where we're starting to see the lower third standard deviation come into? Or do we see a swing below into the lower second and the lower $73,000 area, which I will maintain you likely want to see closes remaining above. And in this case, closes remaining above $76,000. So if we did see a swing down into the mid to low $73,000 area, where the lower second likely would end up if you start to see, even in today's candle, which is the Thursday session that's open, if you start to see Bitcoin break down towards that lower second, it's going to stretch out a little bit intraday, likely into this 73.3 level here. And can that be swung? Sure, but it's getting close to just coming right down and hitting the top side of this daily zone off of the initial even. Can't talk today, been talking all day. So you'll have to forgive me, but in this case, the initial bounce highs of the tighter consolidation that kind of define this tighter range here before we got a couple deviations above it, and then a run right back to the low side area of interest in this range at $65,000. Well, the top side of that range is squarely in the targets if Bitcoin does start to break down, especially below that lower second. And the warning is going to be, seeing lower term time frames start to trade below 74. If we do see that, very highly likely going to come over here to the mid to low $73,000 area and try to head down towards that 72 to 72.2 top side of this tighter range of interest down here, which does extend down to around 70,000 to 70,500, depending on your chart. Now, realistically, if Bitcoin's starting to push into this area, that's going to open up the initial trend break that began the big move up to the monthly here at 82.5. And that's right around the prior cycle high at $68,000 to $69,000, depending on your chart. So that is a daily area of interest below that weekly. And I'll be honest, if we see closes below 70,500 or so, $70,000, we either have already hit this area or will, and that's going to open up the entire bottom side range. That higher low in the weekly at $65,000 would be the next area to really pay attention to, all the way down to 62.5. If that's lost, we're looking down 58 to 60, mid 50s from there, and then 48 to 50 being a big area as well below that. But as long as Bitcoin is trading in this zone, even if it swings it and starts to close back inside of it, upside still remains available to the bulls in this case. And how would we start to gauge that? Back above $76,000, we can start to look at the last lower high structure, and that's at 78. I would argue that you want to see Bitcoin closing back above 78 and the basis band and back inside 78.4 here, which is this overhead weekly zone between 78.4 and 80,000, I would call it just 500 to 700. That's really what you need to see if you are a bull. And that means you want to see closes maintaining this daily zone around the $74,000 area, even if it swings down, recovering above there, and then starting to get back outside of 76, working its way back towards 78, and specifically 78.4 for spot on closes. That's going to rope back in the highs between 80 and the big monthly zone up here, 80,500 to the high there at just shy of $83,000. Then we could potentially entertain moves further up if that were to occur to $85,000 to $86,000 by this weekly, and potentially even more to 89 to 90. And, there's nothing saying that it couldn't push up further to the 93.5 to 96 as well. But as it stands right now, eyes on, because it's decision time, or it's getting close to decision time, I should say, for Bitcoin, in terms of, where does it find support again, and then try to change the daily downtrend, because we do have a daily downtrend, lower highs and lower lows. And realistically, nothing really even that interesting outside of a run back to the highs to take out the bigger move down on the daily. But anywhere above there, that opens up further potential upside towards that monthly and higher. Now, big thing to pay attention to. I don't often pull up other indicators here, but we are at the edge of the bearish control zone. Stoke is pretty oversold, got oversold, came out of the zone. You'd want to see it, maintain, at least for momentum, because we're not getting any RSI divergences here. So if we do see 74 hold on a close, or somewhere around 74 to 74, in this case, it would be 74K actually for the daily zone. You'd want to see a higher low on momentum. In this case, it's a regular Stoke. On close over close momentum is what that is measuring, whereas a Stoke RSI is just measuring RSI, which has no divergences on it as it stands right now, but could provide for maybe a little pop. We'll have to watch it throughout this session on Thursday to see if it provides for a little bit of pop at the edge of the bearish control zone there, as it did essentially close right on it for the Wednesday candle. And this is not anything that any of you watching this Wednesday check-in are unaware of. We've been talking about this for quite some while, talking about the move on the way up above 78 to 80, looking 80, $2.5 to $83,000 at the monthly, potentially more if we saw closes over there. We didn't see closes over there. So I did want to point out that even down to the hourly, I wanted to point this out because I think it's important. Higher time frame to lower term time frame levels of support and resistance are just so crucial to understand. When you look at that monthly, on even the hourly, even just the hourly, close open right on it, do not pass. Came and got front run. Tried to find the 80,700 area as support on closes, right? Before eventually breaking down into the zone. And even coming through to try to hit it, break through it, come back and retest it, then down to the next level. Bounce on the next level, get a little bit of a front run. This was already well tested at 78.4 or so. And then it's down to the next area. Didn't quite hit the bottom side line there. Tried to recover, bounce on it, lost it, found it as resistance. And then what do we see? Right back to the bottom side of the zone here at that 74,100 in this case. So really important if this area is lost, we're very highly likely looking outside of swings that come right back in. We're very highly likely going to see, that 72.2 top side of the next zone at minimum. Doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion, but at minimum, that's where I'd be looking, is top side of the zone or the entire zone, which on spot is 70,500 to 72.2. You just say, 70,000 to 70,500 on the bottom side and 72 to 72.2 on the top side is fair game. Nothing too crazy here. its expansion into support right now. If you see it break down, its continuation price replace band around the 73.5 level. So getting all the same kind of look from price action now. Is there potential for bullish divergences to form here? Maybe on the lower term time frames, like an hour that leads into a 4-hour, maybe. 4 hours not showing anything, outside of like getting back above like 75.3. And then potentially showing some bullish divergence or something like that, and then get a regular Stoke upturning stuff, normal stuff. And then the potential above 76 could potentially bring things back into the 78, 78.4 level. So lower term timeframes are something I am going to be paying attention to throughout the next couple of sessions now that Bitcoin is right at support. And more importantly, I know I'm such a broken record when it comes to this, so you'll have to bear with me, but keep an eye on oil. Oil swung and hit what I talked about kind of like 88 to 90. Essentially swept 88, got 87.77 here on WTI crude. And in this case, this is daily expansion to the downside. If we continue to see oil trend to the downside, but we are seeing a correction in traditional markets, in this case, we'll take a look at traditional markets in just a moment, but we're getting a little bit of risk off rotation within those markets while oil has traded down, while Bitcoin is right at support. What you need to watch for is that if we are seeing a high put in on traditional markets and Bitcoin's at support and oil does one of these and heads back up, very likely going to see those supports fail and in a deeper correction within traditional markets. Doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion again, but that's kind of what the market is hedging. Tomorrow there is a bit of economic data coming out with preliminary GDP numbers and a few other things. It's something that I guess you could watch for. Most of the sentiment surrounding recession, it was fever pitch for a little while, and that's pretty much settled down. But we'll see what preliminary GDP comes in at. And again, it's preliminary GDP. A lot of volatility within, the oil and energy markets, notwithstanding. Maybe we'll see what happens, and if that gets stripped out of some of the reads coming in towards the end of summer, because it's going to take a while for that to work through, and we'd need to see consistently lower prices in oil in order to see that the inflationary pressure from core metrics and the shorter term volatility start to cool off and reflect in economic data. When looking at traditional markets, and this is where what you'd want to see is Bitcoin at support, a risk off rotation of markets, even if they correct further, and see oil drop, and then see where Bitcoin bounces from on support, whether it's here or lower. If oil remains down, likely going to see a decent rally off of supports for Bitcoin, whether it be the current support or heading down a level, grabbing some liquidity, or maybe even two levels, right? Hitting that kind of, what I've talked about, rubber hits the road around 70 to 72. That's kind of where below 70, bulls lose a lot of protection in and around that 68 to 69K. But what you'd want to see is oil cooperating and heading down, right? As Bitcoin is heading into supports, either at this support or the next supports. And then also what that would provide for is probably a more mild correction in markets instead of like the bigger correction. So let's go ahead and take a look at Dow. This is showing you that this has the expansion to the upside. We got some brand new all-time highs. Great. This is risk rotation within markets. You see that NASDAQ down on the day, although it opened on a new all-time high. And SPY kind of flat within the candle that put in the new all-time high. So really it is going to be about watching what happens with risk as it relates to oil still maintaining closes around that 90 to 95 level, a little bit above 90 in this case for WTI. If we see that it rebounds, probably going to see the correction a little bit further down. and I'd be aware of where Bitcoin is and if it shoots through support or if it holds it. And then if oil continues down and we still see further corrections in traditional markets and in Bitcoin in this case and crypto, I'd be looking at those supports lower being more attractive. And if it continues to head down and traditional markets rally in the lower term time frames, maybe Bitcoin can rally off of 74 again. We've kind of hit all of the targets I've been talking about, taking 5 points at a time for SPY, 750 to 755. We got 752 on the high there. And in this case, it's all about the 730s down here. And realistically, we'd have to see a high put in. We don't have one right now. Closes below 748 would do it. Closed right on 750, 750s and 59 cents, right? So essentially closed right on one of the primary targets. Next area to the upside, if we did see continuation, especially if we see if we see SPY continuing to trade and close above the upper first here, which is probably going to open tomorrow right around the low in that 748 region. Now that opens up 755 to 760, potentially more to 765. Things got really ripping to the upside. Maybe good news juices it or something, but I would still take it 5 points at a time. NASDAQ, any closes below, in this case, it would be below yesterday's low, but you can basically take the open. I would take actually the low, which is going to be at around 29,808. Would paint the high, but as long as we see it closing or maintaining closes above 29, I'm going to call it 29,750. Probably still good to try for the highs, up by 30,500, right? And we opened at 30,081. So we did hit the 30,000 target on the open. And next area, I would take a little bit of time, 30,300 to 500, and then go from there. But any further corrections, it's all about watching right around 28,630. And then deeper corrections from there, starting to bring things down towards the lower first, gap fill at 28K. And then potentially more to go and grab, 27.5. Top side of this is fair game all the way down to the upper 26s at 26.8 to 27K. Dow, continuing this expansion. If you want to see continued expansion on Dow, well, one, you would need to see a little bit of sideways price action, risk rotation, and then we'd be looking at maintaining closes above around 50,225 would continue the expansion to the upside and keep the all-time high and new highs in play to like 51.5 or so. But if it does start to lose that, I'd be looking back towards, not just the basis at 49,750 or so, but I'd be looking down to potentially even the lows here and watching around that 49, 3 to 4 level by that lower first, because if it's lost, very, very quickly going to hit 49 and then under down to this low at 48.78. So eyes on. This is kind of where you want to pay very close attention to how Bitcoin reacts to its current daily level at 74 to 76 inside of this zone. And if it starts to lose it, keep an eye on oil. Is it bouncing aggressively to the upside? Because then likely we're headed down to not just the next support, but beware that it could, result in a further downside move. And if it continues to dump off and we still see corrections within traditional markets and risk off rotation within traditional markets, the tech to value or dividend buy, some might call it, pay close attention to if oil is dropping, if Bitcoin maintains its current support or goes for the next one, and oil is continuing to head down, then I think, it's a good chance that we might see some lower term time frame reactions at those levels. That might provide for some potential longer term, maybe attempt at a trend break, whether it be at the overhead at 78 and try to regain 78.4, or, if there's another lower high in place. But we'll talk about all of that on Friday. for the Friday wrap up as well. And we'll kind of see, we'll monitor the situation and see kind of how Bitcoin has reacted here at 74 as we have hit the target for the zone, and whether it loses it, swings it, or heads for the next one, or if it starts to close back above 76 and starts to head up back towards that 78 to 78.4 and see if it can't get a trend break. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't really have too much else to say. Things are playing out kind of as we've been talking about, pretty consistently across stages, these videos, David's live show and the breakdown. It's stayed very consistent to all of the things that I've been talking about and where I've been looking for price action to kind of head on a day-to-day basis. And it's not magic. It's just kind of simple if then else, right? And I want to thank you all for liking and sharing these videos out there. I hope that you like and share this one out there as well. I want to thank you for dropping comments and kind of what your thoughts are on things in the comments and what you'd like me to look at. Now, I did mention that in one of those comments that I'd take a look at Wednesday at somebody requested Zcash. I think it was it Zcash or no, not Zcash. Was it Zec? No. Forgive me. What was it? It was not Zcash. It was, maybe it was Zcash. Either way, I actually don't have time to go and look at that today, so I do apologize. And Moon specifically, that apologies for you. I will take a look at it on Friday. I just am a little pressed for time, so I'm going to wrap this up by telling you that I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. That is the most important part, so that you can trade safe. And with that, I am out, and I will talk to you on Friday, and I will take a look at that ticker for you on Friday as well, Moon. My apologies, but all right, take care. Landy out.